Good morning, school. I wanted to take a few moments today to talk to you about time. Louis Armstrong famously saying we have all the time in the world. And that kind of got me thinking, well, actually, how much time is all the time in the world? Now, you will know, as I do, that the world is old. That much we do know. But to really get a sense of how old it is, we need to work on a form of scale, because when we talk about large numbers, I struggle a bit. If someone says to me that Saturn is 743 million miles away from Earth, which I believe it is, I can't really imagine what that distance is in my head. I need a scale. So what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to imagine a Mars bar, a standard Mars bar, type you would buy in any shop. Now, a Mars bar is approximately 10 centimeters long. And so I want you to imagine that amount of space, those 10 centimeters, equates to or represents 100 years. Therefore, using some quick maths, that will tell you that 1 meter will equate to 1,000 years, 10 meters, 10,000 years, 100 meters, 100,000 years, and 1 kilometer there would be 1,000,000 years. Now, again, I realise that may be kind of difficult to get your head around, so I've done you a little video to try and explain what I'm talking about. I filmed it outside, so my camera work is a little bit dodgy, and at times the microphone struggled a bit with the wind, so bear with it, but hopefully if you watch this video, you'll get an idea of what I'm talking about. Right, good morning. It's a beautiful day, and I'm here outside school with my Mars bar. I just want you to take a little moment to think about this Mars bar. It's approximately 10 centimeters long. I want you to imagine that those 10 centimeters represent 100 years. Okay, that's 100 years. So this Mars bar represents, if you think about the 20th century, it's got the moon landings, the First World War, the Second World War, the Vietnam War, the invention of the TV, the invention of the telephone, the mobile phone, the internet. Everything. 100 years. Okay, 100 years of my Mars bar. So I have put my Mars bar here. We're right at the front of the drive. I've got this little chalk line here which represents today, and so this Mars bar, about 10 centimeters long, represents the 20th century. Therefore, as I look up here, you'll see there's another line here, and this line represents 1,000 years. So simply in this 1 meter, this 1,000 years here, I've got, well, this is about the Norman Conquest. So about halfway along that line, I've got the invention of the printing press about there. This is about the Norman Conquest. I go back another 1,000 years. So I'm 2 meters from today on my Mars bar. Another 1,000 years, here we are. This is, well, this would be the Romans, Jesus and Cleopatra. As I move a little bit further along, you'll see I've got another line here. Here I am, about 4.5 meters away. So that's 4,500 years. Okay, and this would be the invention or the creation of Stonehenge and the pyramids. Here's an interesting thought. If we go all the way back to here, this was about Cleopatra. Cleopatra lived closer to the moon landings than she did to the invention of the Great Pyramids. We associate Cleopatra with pyramids. They'd been around for about 2,500 years before she was born. You go back about another 1,000 years before that, we're going about 5,500 years, the invention of a wheel. So there we are, there's the front of school. We've got the invention of the wheel. I'm now moving further away. If I walk all this way, so I'm still walking, you'll get a sense, if I turn the camera around, you'll get a sense of how far we've come. I'm about 12 meters. Okay, this is about 12,000 years ago. It's about this point that the woolly mammoths disappeared due to climate change. We go a little bit further on. We go all the way back here. We're about 20,000 years ago. We've got domestication of dogs. Okay, now please bear in mind how small that Mars bar is, how insignificant in this sense the 20th century has been. We're here 20,000 years. So there we are. 20,000 years ago, we've started domesticating dogs. Let's go back a little bit further. We're going to have to walk, and we're going to walk quite quickly. So bear in mind, each step I take is about 100 years. Each meter is 1,000 years. I've got quite some way to go. Okay, I'm still walking and still walking all this way. It's a beautiful sunlit drive. Okay, because during this time, the earliest musical instrument was made. That was about 40,000 years ago. 75,000 years ago, we started creating jewellery. So that's jewellery about 75,000 years ago. Clothes were first used about 170,000 years ago, and we should get pretty soon to the earliest art. We're very fortunate, we've got an amazing art department at school, and art has been a central part of human existence for 115,000 years. It may well have started before then, but our earliest indication, the earliest cave paintings that we've got, paintings of animals, are about here. That's 115,000 years. So you may ask yourself then, okay, when did human beings come into existence then? When is the earliest time for humans? Now obviously humans is an interesting point. We're descended from Homo sapiens. Okay, and Homo sapiens, our earliest ancestors of Homo sapiens is about 200,000 years ago. So bear in mind, we're a Mars bar. The 20th century is simply a Mars bar. I am still walking up the drive, you'll see how far that is, and we're just about to get to human existence up here. Our earliest ancestors, Homo sapiens, was about 200,000 years ago. So that takes us all the way to here. Your earliest ancestors 200,000 years ago would have been knocking around this point. Well, what about Neanderthal man? I've read and heard about Neanderthal man, these cavemen, these kind of human subspecies. Well, when were they knocking around? Well, they started about 400,000 years ago. So all that distance we've walked, okay, there's 200 metres that we've walked here. We'd have to walk that again. So I'm going out the gate and I'm turning left, and I'm getting some of the way towards St Anne's to get to about 400,000 years ago. Now the other interesting thing about 400,000 years ago was that was the last time Tottenham Hotspur won a trophy. So as our distances get a little bit bigger, let's take an aerial view. What I have here is an aerial view of the school and the drive. The front of the school is highlighted by that red arrow. That would represent today, and the blue arrow is pointing to a little line there. That would be 12,000 years ago, when the woolly mammoth became extinct. And the yellow arrow, that shows you the distance to 200,000 years ago, when Homo sapiens, our ancestors, first came into existence. And as I mentioned, a Neanderthal man, you would have to go twice as far again, another 200,000 years back in time. So we get a sense there of just how long our ancestors, Homo sapiens, have been around. However, if we then zoom out, and you'll notice the yellow line that I've put on the map here, this distance is 2 kilometers. This would represent 2 million years, and this takes us back to the very first kind of humanoid species. If we go back 2 million years, then Homo erectus, upright man, the first humanoid figure, came into existence. So again, you get this sense that if we use our Mars bar as our scale, we get this sense of just how long human evolution has taken to get us to this point. And so you look at it and go, well, so that human evolution, that evolution of upright man took 2 million years. That's 2 kilometers in our scale. Well, what about the dinosaurs? We know they predated that. Well, when were they knocking around? If that 2 kilometers takes us almost to St Anne's, how far back do we need to go to get to the dinosaurs? Would we have to go back as far as, say, Blackpool, or even up to Fleetwood? How far would we need to go to get an idea of when the dinosaurs were about? Well, the answer is we'd have to go well past Blackpool. In fact, the dinosaurs, the extinction of the dinosaurs, was 65 million years ago. That would mean, to put that in context, that's 65 kilometers on our scale, or just over 40 miles. So that would get you, if you were getting your car, you'd have to drive to just near enough Bolton to get that sense. So we get this sense of what an extraordinary long period of time we're talking about. The dinosaurs were extinct at 65 million years ago. So on our scale, that would take you all the way to Bolton. Now, the other thing to bear in mind is the fact that the dinosaurs were here for a really, 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 really long time. I've mentioned how our dinosaurs died out 65 million years ago at the end of the Cretaceous period. Well, actually, the earliest dinosaurs were around 250 million years ago. If I take two very famous dinosaurs here, you'll see a Tyrannosaurus and a Diplodocus or a Diplodocus, depending on your pronunciation. Now, these are two dinosaurs, and in kind of our common cultural references, you might see a picture like I've got here, which is a Tyrannosaurus fighting a Diplodocus. And yet the truth is, this could and would never happen. Why? Because the Tyrannosaurus was living 65 million years ago, but the Diplodocus was 200 million years ago. That was a Jurassic dinosaur. And one of the things I want you to think about in terms of time is the fact that a Tyrannosaurus lived closer in time to you today than it did to a Diplodocus, which lived 135 million years before. So if I go back to my map and zoom out a bit further, this is what we find. Remember, we spoke about how dinosaurs died out 65 million years ago, which on our map, highlighted here by this blue arrow, takes us to about Bolton. Well, the start of the age of dinosaurs was actually 250 million years before. So in terms of our scale, 1 Mars bar representing 100 years, we would have to go just south of Coventry to get that sense of that distance. So what we're seeing is the fact that the dinosaurs were here for an extraordinarily long period of time. But even dinosaurs aren't the whole story. The kind of earliest kind of life that we would recognise on Earth was the Mesozoic period. That was about 800 million years ago. The Earth itself, the very, very earliest life on Earth in terms of single cells and bacteria and things like that, was approximately 4 billion years ago. And the Earth itself, well, that came into being about 4.4 billion years ago. So compared to the 4.4 billion years the Earth has been around, human beings only account for the tiniest fraction of that time. And yet, instead of despairing at how seemingly fleeting and futile our lives may be, I would suggest the opposite. I think we can take great confidence and great optimism from everything that humans have achieved in such a relatively short space of time. 4,500 years ago, when they built the giant pyramid at Giza, that was the largest, tallest building on Earth, and it stayed the tallest building on Earth for 3,800 years. Human beings are capable of achieving amazing things, and we've been able to do that in an incredibly short space of time. The news on vaccines coming out this week shows us everything that human beings can do when they have a collective will and a desire to do things. So my final point for you is this. Ordinary people think about how they are going to spend their time. I would say to you, time is fleeting. You can only spend it once. So instead of thinking how you're going to spend it, think about how you're going to use it. Thank you, school. Have a great day.